Hi everyone, welcome to today's session. In yesterday's session, we have started the topic called Introduction to Lists. In that class, we have discussed how to create a list and also how to create an empty list. We have said that a list can be created by using square brackets and the data items can be stored in the list by separating with commas. At the same time, we discussed that a list is the collection of similar or we can say different data items. We discussed that there are two types of lists. The first one is single dimensional list and second one is two-dimensional lists. And also we have clearly explained how to access the individual elements of a single dimensional list. In today's session, we are going to discuss how to access the elements of two-dimensional list that we are going to see in today's session. Now let us draw the diagram for representing a two-dimensional list. Here I'm going to draw the diagram for representing a two-dimensional list. Here, take a list like this and divide the entire list into two types, right? This is the first part and this is the second part. And here the index is 0 and here the index is 1, right? Now, in the first part, we are dividing the first part into again two parts. Okay, this is 0 and this is 1. In the first part internal 0, we are having again two parts. In the second part again we have two parts, and here we have a list which consists of two parts, and here we have three parts. Assume that here we have how many parts? Three parts. Just assume that three parts, right? This is 0 and this is 1. Here also this is 0 and this is 1. See here, this is 0 and this is 1. Here, this is 0 and 1. Okay. And here, outer entire list is divided into 0 and 1. Now, this is assume that the entire list. Carefully listen this. Now, first, at the beginning stage, the entire list consists of how many parts? Two parts. This is outer 0 and outer 1. This outer 0, the first box, the big first box is divided into how many parts? Two parts. So how to access this part? To access this part, we use the notation 0, 0, 0, 0. This is the zeroth part of this 0. Now within this 0, we have again two locations 0 and 1. How to access this part? This is denoted by 0, 0. How to access this part? This is whose one? Index is 1, right? So this is indicated by 0, 0, 1. Okay, this is a way of accessing this value and this value. There is nothing stored here, but if you want to access the values which are stored at these places, then you would say it is 0, 0, 0, and here it is 0, 0, 1. Now, assume that for the second part, whose index is 1, assume that the index is again 0 and 1. So how to access these two elements? To access these two elements, what you do is, you have to say here, it is 0, okay, 0, and you take 1, 0, 1 of 0. This is very important. Next, 0, 1 of 1. This is the way of accessing these two elements. Similarly, for the second part, how to access these values, these three values? You know, the index is 0, the index is 1, the index is 2. Here also the index is 0 and 1 and 2. Now, how to access these elements? This element can be represented by, what do you say, 1 of 0 of 0. And this second element is accessed by 1 of 0 of 1. And third element is denoted by 1 of 0 of 2, 1 of 0 of 2. This is the way. So how to access these elements? These elements are indicated by 1 of 0. The second one is denoted by 1 of 1, and here last element is denoted by 1 of 2. This is the representation of accessing the elements of a two-dimensional list. This is a diagrammatical view to access the elements of two-dimensional list. This is only the representation. Now we will see examples for this. Now let us take an example for two-dimensional list. At Python shell, here I am going to take the list, assume that list is equals to, here I am using square brackets, right? Within these square brackets, the first I am going to take is another list 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the list we are taking as the item. And second one, in double quotes, assume that I am taking the string ps raw, comma. Here I am going to take third list, right? Within the third list, I'm going to have the elements, assume that 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7. So here, this is the first data item, and this is the second data item, and this is the third data item. So first data item itself a list, and third data item itself a list, and the second one is string object. So this is the two-dimensional list labeled list list. Now at the at the Python shell, if you say list, then this entire list will be displayed. Now how to get the first data item? To get the first data item, we are going to say that list of 0. When you say list of 0, then we are going to get the elements 1, 2, 3, 4. The first data item is list. Now if I say list of 1, then what we are going to get? We are going to get in single quotes ps raw. This is the string object. String object is enclosed in single quotes. Now whenever we say list of 2, when we say list of 2, then we are going to get the third data item, that is nothing but 5, 6, 7, again itself a list. This is the way of accessing the elements of two-dimensional list. For example, I want to access the element 1 in the list, in the first data item. How to get the element 1 here, this element? Just now we have discussed that the index of the first data item is 0, and second data item is 1, third data item is 2. Now within the first data item representing the index 0, we have the element 1. So the index is 0, 1, 2, 3. Just now we have discussed the representation. To access the list, the element 1 in the first data item, or we can say in the first list, this can be represented by list of 0 of 0. List of 0 of 0. And second number will be given as 0 of 1. So like that you can access 3 and 4. Okay. But the second item is not a list. Directly it is a string object. So directly we can access the string object by saying list of 1. But if you want to access the first element of the third data item, that means the list 2, how to get the element 5 here? To get the element 5, so here what you have to do? You have to mention the indexes, list of, what is the index here? 2. List of 2 of 0, and you know this index is 0, 1, 2. Next, if you want to access the element 2, then you have to say list of 2 of 1. If you want to access the element 7, then we say list of 2 of 2. This is the way of accessing the individual elements of a two-dimensional list. I think it is clear. So this the way of accessing the elements. You can also use the negative indexing. Like you saw the last one is -1, and this is -2, and this is -3. So within this again you have to start from -1, -2, -3. You can also use negative indexing to access the elements. But for the two-dimensional list, better to use only the positive indexes to access the elements, individual elements of a two-dimensional list. Now after this, next we are going to talk about how to add the elements into a two-dimensional list that we are going to see. The topic here is adding elements into a list. What do you mean by adding elements into a list? Assume that we have empty list. We have created an empty list. How to create an empty list? Just now we have discussed that as in the previous session at Python shell. Here I am taking the name of the list as num equals to, just here I am writing empty square brackets. This is the way of creating an empty list. Okay. Now after creating the empty list, assume that we want to add some elements. How to add the elements? There are different approaches, or we can say different methods, or we can say different techniques to add the elements into a list. So what are the different ways? Adding elements may represent appending an element. This is very, very important. Appending an element. And second one is inserting an element. Inserting an element. And third one, we are going to talk about extending a list. That means we are going to talk about three methods. First one, appending, and second one is inserting, and last one is extending. First, we are going to talk about how to add the elements by using append. First, we are talking about append. See, whenever I write parenthesis after append, its meaning is it is a method. It is a method. What do you mean by method? As we said that Python is an object-oriented programming language. Everybody knows Python is purely object-oriented programming language. That means it is going to contain the concept of classes and objects. And every object belongs to the class, and every object can use some methods by using dot operator. We call it as dot operator. For example, we are going to create the list 1. List 1 is the label given to a list. Here the list that is represented by the square brackets comes under the class, and the variable list1 which belongs to the class is known as the object. Now this list1 is going to use some methods using what to say append. Then what you do is the name of the object here we mentioned is list1 dot append. This is the way of using the methods through objects. Here list1 is the object and append is the method. So by saying list1 dot append, we are going to add the elements into a list. That we are going to do. Let us take with an example. Let us see with an example. Here, just now we said that there is an empty list we have created. How? Again, I'm taking this. We said that num is equals to this. Okay. Now, empty list is created whose name is num. Here num is nothing but the object representing this list. This list is the class. Now I'm going to implement the method called num dot. What is the method we are applying? Append. Just I'm giving empty parenthesis. Okay. So if you give empty parenthesis means we are not going to add anything. This is meaningless. Now here assume that I'm specifying some value here 1. Num dot append in bracket we are mentioning the value. So then what happened in the empty list we are going to get the element 1. Okay, after pressing enter inside the num list we are going to have the element 1. Now the syntax of append method here is syntax. Whenever we talk about the syntax here, we are taking the name of the list dot, and we are mentioning the method append. In bracket you have to mention the value that we are going to append. Now here the important thing you should understand here is what is mean by appending. What do you mean by appending? See, adding the element at the end, that is called append. Adding the element at the end. Adding the element at the end. Are we adding the element at a particular position? No. Every time we are adding the element at the end. First, we are going to add the element 1 into the empty list. Empty list doesn't have any elements. So what is the end? The first element is the end. So 1 here. Now, if we say second time num dot append, in bracket if you say 2, then the list is going to have the element 2 at the end. Like that, you can append any number of elements by duplicating append every time num dot. So here at the at the Python shell, every time you can use duplicate append method to append multiple values. So here next here 1 2 3 is added, next 4 is added. Like that, the list is going to get more number of elements, 4, like this. This is the way of appending the elements into a list. I think it is clear. Append only adds the element at the end of the list. This is very, very important. Now we are going to discuss how to insert an element into a list. Inserting means we are adding an element into the list by using second method called insert. We can add using append, we can add using insert, we can add using extend, but approach is different. So append in the sense adding at the end. But if you want to add an element into a particular position, append is not useful. In that case, what we have to use? We have to use insert. Now we are going to talk about inserting an element into a list. It may be a single dimensional list or two-dimensional list. So basically, we are talking about single dimensional list. Now assume that how to insert an element into a list. Let us take one example for this. We have a list n is equals to, we have the elements like this A, B, C. Okay, this is the list. Now in this case, the list n is containing how many items? 3 items. One is A, it is a string object. Second one is B, string object. C is also a string object, right? You know the index is 0 and here it is 1 and 2. This is the list representing by n. Now, I want to insert a new alphabet string object at a particular position. Let us assume that I want to insert a new character to the position 1. Already at 1 B is there, but at B we want to add some X. I want to add the string character object is nothing but string object to the location to the position 1. If you use only append, X is added at the end, that means after C, but okay, append is not useful. In this case, we are using insert. Now, how to do this? Now, at Python shell, what is the name of the list? N. You mention the list n and dot. The method here you have to use is insert. Very, very important. Object name is n dot. The method is insert. Okay. Now, after this, within the parenthesis, you have to mention first position. What is the position at which we want to insert X? Position is 1, comma. Which character we want to insert? X. So this is the string object. So that's why X is enclosed in single quotes. Now this first data item representing the position, this is very, very position. And here this represents the value we are going to insert. So what is the syntax of insert? The syntax of the insert is nothing but the name of the list dot insert, and in brackets you have to mention the position as well as value. This is very, very important. Now once you press enter, X is inserted at the position 1, then the representation of the list whose name is n is like this. Here we have A, at B we have X. Okay, automatically B is moved right, and this is C. So this is the representation after inserting the element X at the position 1. So like this, you can insert any element. Okay. See here, before insert, we have used the method append, right? So by using append, what we have done, we have inserted the value. Ordinary value we have inserted. By using append or insert, not only ordinary value you can insert or append, you can also append or insert a list also. that we will see. So here in this case, in the insert, just we have inserted an ordinary x, the value at the position 1. Now, for example, I want to insert, here assume that n dot insert at position 2, assume that at position 2, I want to insert, instead of taking only one value, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write like this, y, z, here I'm writing yz like this. This is the position, and here the value represent here, the value that we are going to represent here is list. Not only ordinary value, you can also insert a list as a data item into the list labeled n. Previously, I think we have the list representation n like this. I think we have a, right, at b we got x, this is 0 and this is 1. Previously, I think 0, 0 and this is 1. At 1 we have x. Now at 2 we have b and at 3 we have c. But for the list n, what we have added at position 2, I think we have added at position 2, right? So at position 2, what we are going to get? At position 2, we are going to get, this is a position 2, right? At position 2, we are going to have another list like this. This is y and this is z. You see this, y, z. At position 3, we are already there, c. This is the visual representation after inserting yz, nothing but the list, into the list named n. Ax at position 2, we have inserted yz. This is the location. This is a way of inserting the list into the list named n. So like this, you can also use append method. Okay. Now, if I say, for example, at Python shell, I'm taking the new list x, x is equals to, for example, assume that I have 1, 2, 3. This is the list. Okay. Now assume that I'm using the method x dot append. Instead of inserting the value, I'm going to insert the list like this, 4, 5. This is also valid. So in this case, after pressing enter, now the x is going to contain the elements like this. First 1, 2, 3. Next here, it is going to have the elements like this, 4, 5. This is the, and you know this is index 0, 1, 2, and index is 0. So internal indexes are 0, 1. So in this way also we can apply append similar to insert. Now, after completing this, the last thing we are going to use is extend. Extend, we are using the third approach. So just now we have seen first one append, and second one we have used the concept called insert, and third one we are going to use extend. See, extend is different from append and insert. What do you mean by extend? See, extend adds add the elements of, this is very elements of a list as the elements of another list, as the elements of another list, not as data separate data item, not as separate data item. This is very important. See, what do you mean by this separate data item? Just now I said that, see here, just now we have insert to the list, I think we said 1, 2, 3. See here we have inserted 4, 5. See here, if you take this list, how many items are there? This is first item, second item, third item, and this is fourth item. See, there are 4 items. So after performing the append operation just now, we have added the list 4, 5 list as the separate data item into the list. But if we use the concept of extend, the extend is not going to add as a separate data item. It is not going to add this list as a separate data item. The extend is going to add the elements 4, 5 as the separate or ordinary elements of the list, entire list. This that means this list is going to have the configuration like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this. This is the main use of extend. So let us see the example for this. To implement this, let us assume that we have a list. Assume that we are taking list 1 is equals to 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4. Okay. Now assume that there is a list called list 2 is equals to 5 comma 6 comma 7 comma 8. Okay, we have two lists. See here I'm going to say list 1 dot append. If I say append, okay, append in bracket, if you mention list 2, generally what happens, the configuration looks like this. Okay, first we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Already we have these elements in the list 1. Okay, now we are adding list 2, right? List 2 means, see, this is the first item, second item, third item, fourth item. Now append, what it is going to do, it is going to add the list 2 as the fifth item. That means here within this we are going to have separate list like 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is the configuration when you use append. But when we use the concept of extend, here I'm writing list 1 dot extend in bracket, here I'm using list 2. In this case, what happened? The configuration looks like this. You see here 1, 2, 3, 4. Second list is 5, 6, 7, right? These are added as ordinary elements. So this is the name of the list 1. Total result is stored in the list 1. This is the main difference between the append as well as the extend. This is about extend and this is about append. This is the example, some diagrammatical representation to distinguish append and extend. Okay, with this, I'm going to close the session in today's class. With this, I'm going to close the session. Thank you very much for watching.